better than nothing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Squat Cobbler, episode 54. I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUL on Twitter.
I am Mike at Official Pagan on everything.
And Mike and I are continuing our music prisoner exchange. I get to serve up the album for this one. What we're super excited about is coming up probably in an episode or two from here. Mel has provided us a plethora of choices to review, and we're going to be picking one of those out and doing that as a prisoner exchange.
So, it really is a lot, too. She gave us a list of like 20 albums to choose from.
Yeah, we could pretty much just do the Mel list for a while if we wanted to. But we'll see. But we are super open to, if any of you listening have something you'd like to have Mike and I listen to and do the review on, you're welcome to join us. You're welcome to record a rebuttal. We're very open to that. So just, shoot us a note either on Twitter or in the YouTube comments, and we can go from there. But tonight, I got to serve up the album, and knowing Mike's deep love of Kiss, I thought, what would be better than Ace Frehly's solo album?
And yeah, I was a little bit concerned when you recommended this because, like I said, I sort of made a joke when we did the Vond exchange, and I said something like, I knew that this would be an opportunity. I listened to some really weird stuff, so I wanted to take the opportunity to go easy on you at first. And Vond is a little bit weird, but I didn't think it was like so far out of your wheelhouse. Like, wait till we get to like Murs Bow and Purient and stuff like that, where it gets really crazy. But I didn't want to go too crazy, and I knew that we had kind of discussed Kiss before, so you kind of knew I wasn't a Kiss guy. And then you said Ace, and I was like, I might have to pull out something crazy.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'm going to be very interested as we go through this, kind of how you ended up that. And I was torn because I did not want to recommend something to listen to that I figured you'd hate. And there is, in my opinion, a charm to this album, and it's really why I recommend it. I'm a recovering Kiss fan. There was a brief period of time where I did actually like them. I don't really understand. It was really the Destroyer era, so I deserve some forgiveness, I think, on that. But I rapidly bailed. But right around that time frame, a little bit deeper, they decided to release, each of the band members released their own solo album. I purchased all of them because I was a completist at that point in time, and there was a ridiculously ugly poster that you got 1/4 of with each album. And, of course, you got to complete the poster, which was not really worth the price of 4 LPs. But I did it. My goodness, the other 3 albums really kind of sucked. They were really bad. I've always been an Ace fan in terms of his writing and his guitar work. And on the albums, he doesn't get as much square footage in the album as Mr. Simmons and Stanley. But when he does, he makes pretty good use of it, in my opinion. It's always been the salvageable songs for me on there. And this one in particular, since I was kind of an Ace fan, at that point I was also still a Kiss fan. I really enjoyed it. It's not high art, I guess is the way to say it. I mean, you're going to get here. Ace is a great guitarist and maybe not the deepest lyricist in the world.
I have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I imagine you do.
You know what? It's funny though, like a lot of the stuff you're saying about, not being sure how to react to it. Just as like a semi-spoiler, I actually really enjoyed this, and I was surprised that I enjoyed this album because for anyone who doesn't know, I do not like Kiss. I never had a Kiss period. The one caveat to that is I do like the Kiss movies. Phantom of the Park, Detroit Rock City, even the animated movie Scooby-Doo meets Kiss. I enjoy those. I don't enjoy Kiss as a band. It's not like I like that Detroit rock sound, as anybody who's listened to us and our Alice Cooper reviews knows. Kiss to me just doesn't click. And I think part of it too is by the time, and this is going to sound weird to say, but like, because they're so much built around the image of the band. But by the time like I was sort of aware of Kiss and gave Kiss a listen, they had really become sort of a parody of themselves, if that makes sense. Like, I grew up with Kiss condoms and coffins and stuff like that, not Kiss records. Those are real merch items, by the way. They're Kiss condoms and coffins. So, like, that's what I grew up with.
Cradle to grave service from the Kiss merchandising market.
Yeah. But, like, that's the Kiss that I grew up with. So, like, by the time I was aware of Kiss, that's what Kiss was. They were, a product brand. So I didn't really know Kiss as a band. So it was difficult for me to kind of like backtrack into that. Musically, I have heard sporadic things over the years. The Kiss songs that I think I have liked the best are the ones that sound the least like them.
Fair enough. I mean, ultimately, it's not a group that you attach a ton of diversity to because there's kind of a formula to a lot of it, but they are occasions where it kicks out. And in my opinion, a lot of times where it kicks out is when Ace has the writing duties because he was wired a little differently than the rest of the band, I think, in a lot of ways. So
yeah, there was definitely some surprises on this for me, which we'll get to as we go track to track, but including one that I didn't know was an Ace solo song. I thought was a Kiss song.
Well, actually, for this album, a number of these songs were originally targeted for Rock and Roll Over, the Kiss album Rock and Roll Over, and they didn't make the cut, so they ended up on the solo album. I think this is clearly a stronger album than Rock and Roll Over anyway. And so they made a series of bad, unless, well, there's a couple that if these were this, we'll get to them. If there are couples like, okay, that's a good one to pass on maybe. but by and large, most of the stuff on this album would have improved Rock and Roll Over.
After I listened to it, because I didn't want to do, I mean, it's difficult with Kiss because they are such a prominent band. There's tons and tons of information out there. So, but I didn't want to I still wanted to approach it as fresh as I could. So the first listen that I gave this, I didn't really look anything up for it. And then after I listened to it, I looked it up just to kind of see who played on it and see if I could find any liner notes and stuff like that. And I did come across something saying that a number of these songs were actually initially written for Kiss, which makes a lot of sense to me. And I do mention that in a couple of spots. There's a couple of songs, one that I actually thought was a Kiss song. I had no idea it was an Ace solo song. I thought it was a full band song. And then some other things that just make sense that they would be Kiss songs. Now, this is getting off on a little bit of a tangent before we even get too deeply into it. There are other solo albums by members of bands, and I won't mention names or anything like that because I don't want anyone to think I'm saying anything negative about them. But there are other solo albums by bands, by members of bands with songs that were originally intended for the band that got cut for whatever reason. And those artists felt, strong about them and carried them over to solo projects. And I would say that this fares better than those records.
I would agree. Some of these songs, if they were cut, I don't know why, because they're pretty strong. And there's a few weak spots. Like I said, so this wasn't kind of like some of the other ones where it was like, this is like a tour de force. I do find this a very enjoyable album. Even when I went through my Kiss recovery, I still enjoy this album because I like Ace. Let's get right to it. And we're going to start off, as we have established in previous podcasts, I tend to be a first song guy, that if you come out of the gate with a little bit of power, that's going to win my heart. And I think this album fits the bill on that. The first song is called Rip It Out by Ace, Larry, and Sue Kelly. Most of this is just Ace, and I'll flag when there's some other folks involved, but Rip It Out, he has some co-writers on it. Pure rock and roll. I mean, goes from 0 to 60 right away. Great kind of guitar stuff. Again, not deep lyrics. It's basically rip it out, take my heart. I know you wanted it from the start, but it's got good pep to it, good power to it, nice guitar. A lot of these songs feature, obviously, Ace as a guitarist is going to want to demonstrate his skills. He does that throughout most of this album. He does it here. But I think Rip It Out's a really driving and fun, albeit not particularly deep song.
Yeah, it's good driving Detroit rock. I was a little bit concerned going into this, as I said, not a Kiss guy. It's funny because I guess I was aware, I knew, of course, that all the members had solo records, and I was sort of vaguely aware that there was something along these lines where they released solo records all at the same time, sort of a precursor to Wu-Tang Clan. Are you a Wu-Tang fan, Kelly?
No, I'm not. Not even a recovering one.
So Wu-Tang Clan, and what I can only assume was inspiration by Kiss, they made their first record, and then they all went off and made solo records before coming back together to make their second record. And the second record was even bigger because they had picked up fans through their very divergent solo records who otherwise wouldn't have listened to the whole group. So the second group effort was significantly more successful. So I don't know if that's what the plan with the solo records was, but when I told our friend Vex that we were doing this and that the Ace record was the next one we were doing, he got really excited because he really enjoys this record. And he also assured me it's the only one that's even listenable out of the 4 solo records.
Rare moment of incredibly strong agreement between Vex and I, because as having experienced all 4, the regret I felt for 3 out of the 4, it is the only one worth a listen. And it really does, in my opinion. It's a fun album. Again, it's not necessarily super deep stuff, but it's a fun album.
Yeah,
So
and this is a a good straightforward Detroit rock song. I have some issues with the lyrics, but we'll get to that later. It plays into what I think is my biggest quibble and the strongest suit of this record come together in a song that's coming up where I'll get into the lyrics on that. But yeah, it's a good driving Detroit rock song. My only thing with it is I just listening to it, I was like, this could just easily be a Kiss song. And that sort of worried me a little bit because I'm a first song guy a little bit too. So I was a little bit worried that I was just going to basically get a Kiss record just with all Ace singing lead. But that's not what happened. There's some other stuff on this record that gets pretty interesting. So I was pleasantly surprised that's not where it went. And I wasn't surprised after listening to this and certain other songs that some of this material wasn't originally intended for a group album.
yeah, and my guess would be this would be one of them. It would absolutely fit on a Kiss album. It would be an Ace song on a Kiss album, and you'd recognize that. I did feel, as I said, I was worried going into this where you'd kind of land on it because there are good moments in this, but I don't know if there were enough good moments. But I said, well, Rip It Out's gonna at least put them in a good mood to start off with because you can't not like this song. All right. So I'm super interested in where you're going to go on the lyric. Could certainly be this next stop, which is so there's a couple of kind of super trite phrases that if they appear in a song is a bit of a concern. And one of those would be, and I don't mean maybe, as one. And unfortunately, this song does include that with some regularity, speeding back to my baby, and I don't mean maybe, which is not powerful lyrical work, I would have to say. This one was also one where Ace collaborated. That's with his wife, Jeanette Frehley. On this one, not an in-depth character study. I do find it again. It's not really Detroit rock, but it is a kind of a driving song. It is a car song, and I said, oh, this could be a problem because I know Mike's got a point of view on car songs, and this isn't a home run of a car song. But again, while I think Rip It Out's a stronger song, Piles Up first two songs are at least got a good pace to them. They're fun. This one's a little bit. Ace is a much better composer than he is lyricist, and that becomes a little evident in that. Or maybe it was some of his wife's work. I don't know. Basic premise is they fight. He comes back. There you go. But it's a fun song. So I think
there you go.
So what are your thoughts on Speeding Back to My Baby?
So I'm still not going to talk about the lyrics.
Oh, interesting.
This isn't the one yet. However, I absolutely love the guitar work on the intro and the solo. I think the guitar work on that is excellent. And again, I'm not a Kiss guy. I never really got into Kiss, so I was surprised at how competent a guitar player he is. Like, I wasn't expecting intros and solos that are this good. So I was very pleasantly surprised by that. The rest of the song wasn't so much for me because you're moving away from the Detroit rock thing, which I'm fine with, into more of like a classic rock and roll kind of sound on the verse and chorus. And the heavy backing vocals on the chorus, as we discussed with Alice, I'm just not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, and I knew that was going to be kind of a risk point. So we'll go ahead and keep moving on. Now, I guess my next question is, there is a lot. I mean, they're different musically, but Snowblind and Ozone are the next two songs, and they kind of live very much in the same space. And I don't know if you want
I can see that.
And to me, this is kind of the weak point of the album. Are these two songs? For those of you not super familiar with Kiss history, and God bless you if you're not.
Isn't it Kistory?
Kistory, yes, Kistory, my bad. Eventually, both Peter, Chris, and Ace were kind of exiled from the band because they didn't kind of have a balanced lifestyle. And I think both Snowblind and Ozone kind of capture that point of view a little bit. And to me, they're both reasonable songs, but they're not highly memorable. And they don't have the snap that Speeding Back to My Baby or certainly Rip It Out have. They get almost, particularly in Snowblind, I don't know if you want to call it soulful, but I mean you start to get some diversity in kind of the sound instead of the kind of straightforward Detroit rock. You get some kind of stuff there. But I'm going to kind of, in terms of kind of my Sherpa approach for this, I'm going to kind of bundle these two together as two reasonable songs, not bad songs in any stretch, but not songs that if you were to say, this is the track to listen to off this album, I wouldn't pick either one of these two. I don't know if you want to pull apart and pick on one a little bit more or not, or if this is where
I have stuff about both of these.
All right, go for it.
So, and one of them is the one that we're going to talk about lyrics.
Okay.
First, I'm going to talk about Snowblind. So, I really like the riff in this, like the main riff. It has that like early, like proto metal sort of sound to it. However, after I listened to it a couple of times, it sounds a lot like the main riff from Edgar Winter Group's Frankenstein.
Absolutely. There was a familiarity to it, but I hadn't made that connection. But as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, because I listened to it the first time and I was like, I wasn't in love with the song, but I was like, that's a really cool riff. It's like one of those early metal, just pre Black Sabbath kind of metal riffs. And I'm listening to it and I was like, I feel like, have I heard this song before? And just going over it. And then I was like, this is the song Frankenstein. So that is a little weird, but it does show some diversity though. You're moving away from the Detroit rock thing. I don't know when Frankenstein came out, but so I'm not sure which one came first.
I'm thinking they were pretty close.
Yeah, I would think they're more or less the same era. So I'm not saying he stole this, but they're very similar riffs. I'm not saying either one stole it from the other. And then on Ozone, this is where this song encapsulates what the best and worst elements of this album are to me. The lyrics on the song are stupid. And that's to me what unfortunately is the weak part of this album is the lyrics. Because the music is way better than I anticipated it being. Because not being a Kiss guy, I never really thought of Kiss as offering a whole lot musically. And Ace's guitar playing on this, I think, is excellent on this entire album. I think it shows a lot of diversity of his influences and his abilities. I was really pleasantly surprised. I was equally unimpressed for the most part by the lyrics, and Ozone is a great example because Ozone is probably the most technical song musically, and it has the most simplistic, silly lyrics of the entire album. Yep. So it's sort of like a microcosm of what I like the best and like the least about the whole album.
Yeah, paper thin, particularly for Ozone because it is remedial, and that is the disconnect because really for almost all the way through this album, it's great music.
It really is, and that's why like I'm not trying to pick on Ozone necessarily, but like these are the weakest lyrics on the whole album over the most complex music on the album. And I really like the music all the way through. I think Ace is a really great guitar player. Listening to this, I'm really glad you suggested this because it actually gave me a real appreciation for him as a guitar player and just all around general musician that I did not have before. But lyricist, I would say no.
Yeah, I think he would benefit by pairing up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I would love to hear like a super group with him on guitar and a better lyricist fronting the band. Because like, and I know you said you weren't a particularly big fan of these two songs, but like, regardless of which one came first, like the Edgar Winter Frankenstein riff is a really interesting departure for the album. And then with Ozone, you can hear like an influence on what later became like a lot of the stoner rock bands that came out in the 80s and 90s. Like you can hear a lot of that element on something like Ozone, except that the lyrics are just so simplistic.
Yeah, I think Ozone is the poster child for simplistic lyrics on this album, and then that's
and that's why, like, not to pick on it, but like that's why I chose to talk about the lyrics on this one because this is the one with the most simplistic lyrics.
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point that possibly paired with some of the most complex music or the most kind of thoughtful composition on there.
Oh yeah, it's definitely from a technical standpoint, it is the most technical song on the record. It paired with the most simple lyrics on the record.
First two, Rip It Out, Speed Back to My Baby, we're not lyrical masterpieces, but he did have some help. Snowblind and Ozone, those were just Ace only. And so he's left to his own devices on that. And then we'll go ahead and move into What's on Your Mind. So this one I think at least is ups the game, and maybe it's just relative to it's coming off of Ozone. So you're gonna, if there's any depth, it's better. But in terms of kind of the lyrical content, a little bit better. The vocal delivery, the hooks in this, it is the most power pop song on this album. It's a wonderful little song. It's kind of fun when Ace is singing, the chorus of it. It's a kind of a staccato, clever little chorus. It sounds really, really good. And again, great guitar in it from there. And I think this is very kind of poppy. but a pretty fun song.
It actually made me think of like 90s alternative rock. The way it has the clean guitars and then the clean lead guitars and then the distorted rhythm guitar. Like that was something that was so popular in the 90s, and obviously this is way ahead of that time-wise.
Yep. And I did some deep internet research while we were going through this discussion, and much to my surprise, Frankenstein 1980 release. So 2 years after.
Oh, there you go.
So maybe Edgar picked off Ace on that one a little bit.
There you go. And that's why I said I'm not calling either one of them a thief in this, because I didn't know when they came out relative to each other. And it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. The riffs are very similar.
Yeah, and What's on Your Mind's a kind of a big turn on this one in terms of it is a different vibe to it. And kind of what you mentioned regarding kind of the guitar mix and kind of the approach, definitely that kind of 80s 90s feel to it. Like I said,
which really makes it ahead of its time, because when did this come out?
78.
Yeah, and this is so many like radio rock bands, and then every radio rock hit in the mid 90s did this with the clean leads, with the distorted rhythm mixed slightly below it.
Any other thoughts on What's on Your Mind, Mike?
No, that's it. The guitar stuff was really what struck me with it.
So speaking of radio play, and this was of the 4 Kiss solo albums, the best-selling Kiss solo album, and one would expect that was largely because of the single off of this album, New York Groove, which is not an Ace composition. It's written by Russ Ballard. He kills it. It's a great version of it. You get somebody else providing the lyrics, which in this case maybe is helpful in that process. But this, to me, this is just, if you kind of every once in a while just want to hear a song that's kind of pure enjoyment and fun, this is a fantastic song, and it did well on the radio, and there's good reasons why, because I think it's a great song.
I knew that this was a cover song. However, I thought this was a Kiss song. I did not know that this was an Ace solo song.
Probably because it got like tons of radio play.
Yeah, like this is, and I'm 100% sure when I've heard this on the radio, it is just credited to Kiss. Like on local radio stations, when they play this song, like classic rock radio, they just say Kiss. They definitely don't say Ace, which is a shame, because like I said, I surprisingly really like this record. Other than, to me, the weak spot throughout the record is lyrics. Other than that, I really gained an appreciation and a respect for Ace as a musician through listening to this. And it's a shame that like the biggest song, like, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who thinks this, thought that it was a Kiss song.
Because it's got, I would say, some of that. So Kiss on their singles was always highly engineered in terms of saying, so what is the right kind of tonality to hit, number of hooks, number of kind of, what can you do to, they were mass manufacturing things that they want to get played a lot on the radio. Rock and Roll All Night's really good example of that. And this has some elements of it, but I also think that this one does, this to me doesn't feel like a song that was exclusively written to say, I want a hit. I want something that's going to kind of go through. I do think it's hooky, but it's just a great song. I think it's really fun. So it wins me over from there, but I could absolutely see where there could be lack of clarity on is that Ace or Kiss, but it was Ace.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. Also, just as a weird aside, the group Lords of Brooklyn did a cover of this that if you're a big fan of this song, you might want to check out their cover.
I will absolutely do that. Maybe if it happens to be on YouTube, maybe it'll be part of our blog post, so we can maybe provide the Ace version and that version as well.
Because that's actually what kind of, like, I had heard this song before, but again, not really a Kiss guy. So through their cover of it, it gave me a little bit more of an appreciation of the song itself.
Yeah, and I'd have to go back to listen to the original of this too. It'd be kind of interesting to kind of hear all three of those and kind of see what the path looks like on that.
Well, I know I've interacted with those guys a little bit, and I know that they are big Kiss guys. So they were, while they, I'm sure, were aware that it was a cover song from Ace to begin with, they're specifically covering the Ace version of the song and putting their own spin on it.
Cool. I'm looking forward to hearing that. So one of the high points of the album, obviously, as it was New York Groove. We then move into I'm in Need of Love, which to me, middle tier of this album. kind of, again, isn't the paper thin lyrics of Ozone, but it's maybe 3 or 4 thicknesses of paper in terms of that. It is, at least I think, a little bit more. It comes back again to the musicianship and the composition, that it's kind of interesting how this song plays out. And like I said, there's not a deep and big story to tell in there, but in terms of the delivery of a song, it's pretty great. Much like What's on Your Mind, it's a departure from, it's not a Detroit rock thing, and there's some pretty interesting things done with the mix and some other things with it. So I think it adds to the album. It adds value. It's not one of the strongest songs on the album, but it's a good, solid addition.
I actually really like the atmosphere of this song. I think it has like a cool. It creates like an interesting sort of feel to it. It reminds me, and maybe this is how I initially heard it. It reminds me of something from a movie. Like, I can't think of the specific movie, but I'm wondering if I'd heard this in a soundtrack, because the way that sort of echoey guitar effect plays out, I feel like I've heard that before, and it's just a really cool atmospheric kind of track, like you said, though. And this is sort of my running quibble with the album. Not a ton going on lyrically, which is, other than there are certain songs musically that are like better than others. That's my kind of overall take on the album. I really like the music on this. I really kind of wish he had hired a lyricist.
It is workman-like lyrics over craftsman-like music, and that's kind of.
Wow, that is a really excellent way to put it.
But it's a fun listen to me. Actually, the album makes me smile. I enjoy it.
Yeah, overall, I know we're not at the end yet, but like overall, I really enjoyed this, and I did not expect to.
So then we come to Wiped Out, and so now Ace is collaborating again. Anton Fig, the drummer, from a variety of sources. Actually, Anton worked with Frank Zappa for a little while as well. They wrote this song together. Starts off with very much the Dick Dale Wipeout type of guitar and intro. You might not quite surf guitar, but darn close. Definitely Dick Dale inspired, and you actually get that kind of Wipeout kind of Dick Dale thing to go in, and it roars into action as a song to begin with. And have such mixed emotions about this song, because the up-tempo pieces of this song I love. When they do a transition and they go into a slower register for some of the kind of chorus and processes there, it just doesn't match as well as I'd rather they had kept the tempo, kept the accelerator down through the whole song, because it's like, I love the up-tempo pieces of this song, and I'm just not as big a fan of the when it slows down and gets a little bluesy, a little soul-y, because it just doesn't match as well. And so I ran that flag a little bit earlier about, I don't mean maybe, as a flag of weak lyrical intent. When you trot out "I was blind as a skunk" as one of your lyrics, another flag for me.
I don't even think I caught that.
Yep. And it's just like, it's a shame, because again, it's pretty great musicianship on this, and it's a fun song. I really do like it. Like I said, I think when it shifts tempo, I like it a little less, but it kind of keeps coming back to the other part. I love the intro to this song quite a bit, so I enjoy it overall. But like I said, it's a little uneven for me.
Definitely an uneven song. I wasn't a huge fan of the Wipeout reference in the beginning. That could be my own thing, though. I remember being a kid and taking my first music lessons and like trying to not just learn Wipeout, but play it the way that people anticipate hearing it. That it's a song that I'm sick of, and I never want to hear again, even a reference to it. So one of the things I did like on this track, though, you really summed up a lot of my thoughts on it as far as the transitions. One of the things that I thought, I'm not even sure if I should say liked it, but it really struck me. There's sort of like that 70s porn guitar approach on parts of this song. Do you know what I'm talking about? That almost like funk porn score?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's exactly, because I'm a big porn score guy.
70s porn score.
70, yeah. I mean, yeah, because the 80s became trite from a musical standpoint.
From a porn music standpoint.
Yeah. It was the low point of porn music, was the 80s.
Somebody's going to leave an angry YouTube comment about that. That's when porn music hit its zenith.
It was the golden era.
You even listen to the score for Cafe Flesh?
Yeah, we are getting that. By the way, just a little side note, and by the way, based on YouTube comments, I know how much people love when we go on tangents. Not much, by the way. That has become a repeated refrain on a number of our Alice reviews, particularly the early albums. There's a lot of people doubting that we ever listened to the albums. So. Yes, so we have listened to 70s porn musical scores, and we have listened to all the Alice albums, including the first two, even though there's doubters out there.
You're wrong, just like your opinion of the albums.
That's right. There you go. So again, driving, you could definitely see Anton's influence in terms of pretty heavy drum feature on this, almost a John Entwistle-like bass line in some of this, which is kind of cool as well, because I'm a big Who fan, so that's always great. Pretty fun song. And then the album wraps up with an instrumental called Fractured Mirror, which heavily features, shockingly enough, guitar work. I think this is, from an instrumental standpoint, this is a great set piece. It's a fantastic way to end the album. He's done a lot of fun stuff all the way through here. This is kind of let me wrap the album up by showing you what I can do on guitar, give you a nice instrumental. This definitely would not have been a Kiss candidate. This is clearly an Ace thing on this album. And I think it's a nice capper to the album.
Yeah, I really liked it. I love instrumentals. It really shows off his guitar playing. It's another Divergence, but it's weird. The Divergences on this album don't sound so far out of character where they pull you out of the album. They're just enough to show his diversity of his influences, which I really like.
And so that is the Ace Frehly solo album, Music Prisoner Exchange review. I'm a fan of this album. I listened to this album, and it sounds to me, Mike, as you're going through, to say, upon exposure, you're saying, hey, this is pretty good. I don't mind it.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually really liked it. My only quibble is the lyrics, but other than musically, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, that was a bit of my concern as I kind of came back to kind of re-prep and get familiar for it at all. After the fourth, I don't mean maybe. I'm like, I don't know if Mike's gonna find that to be a home run in terms of some things from there. The other thing to know is that this was co-produced by Ace and Eddie Kramer. Eddie Kramer heavily involved with a number of bands. He worked quite a bit with Kiss in different capacities as well. And in my research and prepping for the album, fun fact, gang, Eddie Kramer and I share a birthday. So there you go. How about that? There's a nice connection. Who knew? So on that note, we're going to probably wrap up this discussion. Next up will be Lycia's Iona, which is Mike's recommendation to me. And we'll be discussing that the next time we come back on Squat Cobbler. So any parting comments, Mike?
Thank you for recommending this, because I never would have checked this out on my own. And I'm glad that I've listened to it.
I'm super glad that you enjoyed it. It was a coin flip for me. I was like, I think there's enough in this that's gonna speak to Mike, and it's got its flaws, but it's still a fun album, and I enjoy it. And so if you folks haven't had a chance to listen to it, give it a shot, because Ace is a tremendous musician and a great guitarist. Maybe not the world's greatest lyricist, but it's still pretty fun stuff. So I hope you do get a chance to listen to it and enjoy it. And Mike, I appreciate you taking the time to go through it, and we will be back with more things to talk about soon. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast.